I didn't hear the chimes. Did they ring?
No, because we still had 2 minutes, Nancy.
Oh.
But I can ring the chimes now if we want to start. We'll start in a minute.
No, okay.
Here are the chimes. Please join us in the hymn of welcome, number 6, As Long as I Have Breath.
I'm going to play it through once so we can hear the melody, and then I will say ready and sing. Ready and sing, just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha McCoy. I am a member here at UUCD, and I'm currently serving as the Vice President on the Board of Trustees. I have also been involved with religious education over the many years that I've been a member. And currently, one of my projects is working with the Racial Justice Forum and taking our congregation toward endorsing the 8th principle. So welcome to this virtual service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. We're so glad that each of you are able to join us this morning, and together in community, we can ensure that social distancing doesn't mean social disengagement. Our weekly services are more than just a gathering of our physical bodies. It's the forming of a sacred time that we make together. Whether you are well-versed in the technology of teleconferencing or this is your first venture, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. You can learn more about us on our website and Facebook page, and we encourage you to share our Facebook page and reach out to others who may be isolated at this time and might benefit from the spiritual connection that's typically available by walking through our open doors on a Sunday morning. In terms of announcements today, we hope that you will look through all of the announcements in your order of service, but we particularly want to highlight the two you see on your screen now. The first one would be the regular meetings for the young adults of UUCD group that meet at noon after the service each Sunday here in the Zoom room. Sequoia Lowe is the contact for that if you have any questions. And the Racial Justice Forum, which I mentioned a moment ago, is active again and hoping to reinvigorate the anti-racism work that UUCD is involved in. This coming Wednesday, a group of us will be attending a Zoom meeting hosted by the Unitarian Church of the Restoration just outside of Philadelphia. And they work with congregations who are looking at the eighth principle. And so if that is something you are interested in knowing more about, I encourage you to reach out to Marian DeFabio, who is chairing the Racial Justice Forum. So again, welcome to the UU Congregation of Danbury, where we welcome all in the spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service. Oh, I just realized the online guidelines, if you need to change your view or use the chat, the instructions are there. If you're having any technical difficulties, just look for UU Congregation of Danbury in the chat list, and you can ask any questions you might have. So now I will turn it over to Joanne Davidson, who's going to deliver our opening words.
Good morning. The opening words this morning are by Annie Dillard. We are here to abet creation and witness to it, to notice each other's beautiful face and complex nature, so that creation need not play to an empty house.
Good morning. I'm Rick Cousins. Welcome. If you would please join me with the chalice lighting affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce the topic of today's discussion or our remarks. We're going to play a song. The next song has been chosen for its content rather than its performance. I like it because it brings to, in my mind, it brings forward two of life's big questions. Please commence, Sherry. Thank you.
Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? Mystery. What are we? Life is a riddle and a mystery. Where do we come from? Mystery. What are we? Life is a riddle and a mystery. 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 do we come from? What are we? Where are we going? Where do we come from? What are we? Where are we going?
Okay. The two big questions that it asks, where do we come from and what are we? Very interesting. Of course, there are several big questions in life. The ones that come to mind for me are, what is the meaning of life? Are we alone in the universe? And double chocolate cone or a dish of strawberry froyo? I leave these big questions to other people or other more talented philosophers than myself. I personally would like to reflect on the question, where do we come from? This question becomes increasingly difficult as we grow older. For infants, it's just simply a matter of biology. Normally, our parents play a huge role in providing roots and helping us develop and determining, or they are where we come from and who we will eventually become. As we become older, we change our we are changed by our connections and interactions with others. A favorite French teacher, soccer coach, ballet instructor, school bus driver, neighbor, or possibly religious ed teacher. Joanne, would you like to share some remarks with us?
Well, yes. My interest in the questions is how where we come from determines, influences what we are and where we're going. I believe that the circumstances of my birth and my early childhood had a profound effect on how I developed as a person. Much of it may have been inborn, but the circumstances that I was born into certainly, I believe, had a profound effect on how I developed and the way I look at the world and the way I carry myself through the world. Rick.
Nancy, would you
Yeah.
help us with your, thank you.
Certainly. Are we ready for milestones? Okay. So we are going to have a period of shared milestones now. And of course, on Zoom, this means sharing in the chat window, dropping a stone in a bowl on camera, silently, or lighting a candle on your own, or all three of these options. Carl will play for us while we are doing that.
Nancy, would you like to commence the offering? Nope. No, this is us. Joanne, we're on. uh, I had an awesome childhood growing up in nearby North Salem, New York, which is right across the New York state border. It's only probably about, what, 15, 20 minutes from UUCD. I had a tiny nuclear family. My mother was an only child, and my father's brother was married but had no children. As a result, I had no first cousins. Growing up, my parents were very, very hands-on and were very, very involved in our lives. Our family vacations were typically camping trips to nearby Connecticut. My sister and I were very, very active and involved in school sports, after-school clubs, specifically 4-H. It goes without saying that middle school can be a difficult time for lots of kids, and I was no exception. I think of the middle school years as a time in which we navigate the social order and figure out who we are. Well, I found out who I wasn't. My parents told my sister and my sister and me that we were both adopted as infants. I remember thinking, in the parlance of my kids' generation, wait, what? I thought to myself, wait, so you're really not my parents? Where are my real parents? That question was not easily answered. My parents initially had the chance to learn about my birth mother, but they chose not to. They were happy just to take me home. That was enough for them. The question of where are my real parents is what ignited my desire for connection. Somehow it was much stronger than mere curiosity. I really wanted to find out about my birth parents, but how could I explain my desire to the only parents that I had ever known? Would they think me ungrateful? Not knowing the answer to this question would haunt me, sometimes quite forcefully, at the strangest times. Often I would find myself to be overly emotional at the end of movies, for example, where family members would find each other and rejoice in their reunion. I found myself responding with sadness in response to someone else's happiness. It was very confusing. I found out that I was adopted when I was 10 years old, and it took me 45 years before I could actually have closure, the closure that I sought. Joanne, your thoughts?
Well, I was born in November of 1954 in an unwed mother's home in Manhattan. My mother, Susan, was 15 years old. My father's name was not listed on the birth certificate. 6 months later, the woman who became my foster mother went to a rummage sale at St. Peter's Church in Danbury, and she got into a conversation with a woman who happened to work for Catholic Charities in Connecticut. My mother Susan's family had moved to Connecticut. They had been planning on it, but they moved it up when she got pregnant because her mother was not best pleased, shall we say, with the situation, and I guess wanted to get out of town as quickly as possible. So in any case, they had moved to Connecticut. I was born in Manhattan. 6 months later, my foster mother got into this conversation at St. Peter's Church with this woman from Catholic Charities. And they were talking about how they loved children, and my mother had wanted to have more children, my foster mother, but she was only able to have one. And so this woman said, well, I know of a baby that needs a home. Would you be interested? And that's how I came to that family. So a little after I was 6 months old, I came to live in Danbury with a native German family, Mama, Papa, Papa's brother Hans, Maria and Rudy were my parents, and they had a daughter, Marion, who was actually almost a year older than my mother. Knew from the very beginning, I knew that this was not my birth family because, and I found out much, much later, my mother, Susan, had come to visit until I was 3 years old. So, and so I think the possibility always existed that I might not stay there, that I might go back with my mother. That was what she wanted. She wanted to take me back and keep me. However, when I was about 3, she came to visit for the last time, and when my mother Maria announced her visit saying, "Your mother is here," the story goes that I turned to her and I said, "She's not my mother, you are." And when my mother Susan heard that, she realized that too much time had gone by and that it was just not going to work. And so she gave me up for good at that point. So again, I always knew that the family I lived with was not my birth family. They always put it in very positive terms, that it wasn't that my mother didn't want me, it was that she wasn't able to take care of me and she wanted me to have a good life. And so that's why she gave me up. And I don't remember ever being angry about it or resentful or blaming my mother for what she did. But I do know that, again, the stories go, that I latched onto my foster mother fiercely, and no one else could hold me or comfort me but her for the first little bit of my life. And I wound up growing up a solitary child, mostly. I had friends, but only one at a time. I was never a group person, and I never much sought out other people to connect with. I was very content and spent most of my childhood, as I remember it, alone in my room, listening to music. Once the Beatles came out in '64, I spent a lot of time listening to the radio, reading. I grew up in a 100-plus-year-old farmhouse on 5 acres of land, which I absolutely loved. Spent a lot of time out in the woods, again, pretty much by myself. We had a dog that I loved growing up, my Sandy, who was a collie, and she was probably my best friend growing up. This all sounds very sad, but it really wasn't. Occasionally, I would feel sad and lonely that I didn't have, friends like I saw the other kids, like the kids I went to school with. I would hear stories of their get-togethers, and sometimes it would make me feel sad and lonely, but generally speaking, I embraced it. I enjoyed being alone. And I enjoyed the serious connections that I did make. I met my oldest and dearest friend, Louise, in 1959 on the first day of kindergarten, and we're still friends today. But again, it's largely because of her, because she kept the connection going. If it had been left to me, probably not. And that's no reflection on anybody. That's a reflection on me, on just the way I am in the world. My sister remarked at one point that, you're so funny. You'd sit here alone all day, but when somebody comes and invites you out, you go. And that's me. It's up to other people to come and pull me out of myself and to get me out and get me involved. So I have to say thank you to this congregation for doing that, because it's really been a wonderful thing in my life that you all have done for me. And even though I don't write and I don't call and I don't visit, I love you all very much. So in any case, like I say, I grew up pretty much solitary, although again, I got married twice, in fact. My foster mother passed away in 1987. And around 1993, I was listening to the radio. There was a guy, Rick McDonald, who had a wonderful show on WINE in Brookfield. And this particular show, he had a guy on from the state adoption agency, and they gave out an 800 number. And now I had never had a burning desire to find my mother. I knew the story, and I guess that was enough for me, or possibly I was just repressing it, I don't know. But in any case, when he gave out this 800 number and said that adoption records were being opened up, you might be able to find out some information, I figured, well, what the heck, it's an 800 number, it doesn't cost me anything, let me try it. So I called, and long story short, I was put in touch with a woman named Nancy, who had been adopted and had found her own birth mother and was excited to help other people do the same thing. And after a year, she was able to track my mother down in Florida, and she put us together. And I made a phone call and spoke to my mother for the first time since I was 3 years old. And the first words that she said to me, were, "I'm sorry." She had carried that with her whole life, that she had given me up. And I was very happy to be able to tell her, no, you don't have anything to be sorry for. You did absolutely the best thing. I had a wonderful family. I've had a great life, and I don't blame you for anything. You did what you needed to do, and it worked out fine. So I will conclude this part by reading a little bit of a letter that she wrote to me when we first got in touch. I wrote her a long letter, and then she responded. She sent me pictures and so on and so forth. So this is the letter that my mother Susan wrote to me when we had first gotten back in touch. "Joanne, you can't know how happy I am that you wanted to find me. You've never been out of my thoughts all these years. And I've wondered about your life. All I ever wanted for you was peace and happiness, and I'm glad you've been happy for the most part. It's comforting to know that you understand. I loved you too much and wanted you to have a normal life with people who were able to care for you. The Donderers did a wonderful job, and I'm forever grateful. You asked what I wanted you to call me. I didn't have the right then, nor do I now, but if you could see your way clear to call me Mom, it would make me very happy. If not, I'll understand." Well, I call her Mom.
Thank you, Joanne. What a wonderful story. For myself, my reasons for reaching out for seeking my roots were twofold. First was I found out that there were medical questions that were posed to me that I couldn't answer. And secondly, my younger son had developed an avid interest in genealogy. He had also discovered that he couldn't determine where he came from until I did. I explained these two facts to my adoptive mother, Gail, and thought nothing of it. 2 weeks later, I received a package in the mail from her and found out that she had gone to her safety deposit box and she'd sent me the folder containing my adoption documents. One of the documents contained the name of my birth mother had given me before I was placed, literally, in the hands of the adoption agency folks. I actually had my birth name. My son was so excited to have this information, and he decided to give me a DNA kit from Ancestry.com. The results took about 6 weeks to process. My closest genetic match with my newly discovered birth name turned out to be my biological mother's first cousin. After exchanging a few emails with this cousin, I received contact information from my maternal aunt, who eventually told me that I had a brother and 2 sisters on my mom's side. The best part of the discovery was to learn that they were interested in meeting me. We met up at a restaurant here in Danbury and spent about 9 hours together talking, exchanging stories and pictures. It was such an amazing experience. Before the COVID constraints appeared, we were meeting up each month to hang out, chat, and enjoy each other. Eventually, I met my birth mother and was just thrilled. The DNA results also contained the name of my paternal biological uncle, who had been given a DNA kit for fun for his birthday the year before. Besides my younger son, he was actually my closest DNA match. No surprise there. I found my biological dad through Facebook with some help from one of my newly discovered cousins, and have a sister and 2 brothers on my dad's side. As a result of this journey, I've actually met 5 of my 6 half-siblings and can now claim 26 new first cousins. While I've only met 2 of them in person, I'm Facebook friends with more than a dozen and can't wait to make the 2-hour trip to Pennsylvania and make a personal appearance and meet a bunch more. I'm so happy to have my desire for connection satisfied and to be accepted by such a wonderful and generous group of people. It was so much more than I had ever expected and consider myself to be incredibly fortunate. Thank you for listening. We'd like to move now. Oh, Joanne, did you have something else? Muted.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to just briefly talk about the other side of my family, because as I mentioned, my father's name was not listed on the birth certificate. But a few years ago, my family, now when I say my family, I mean my foster family, because they are still my family to this day. They gave me the Ancestry DNA kit for Christmas. And so through that, I was put in touch with my Wilson cousins. My mother, Susan, had gotten my father's birth certificate. She used to make periodic visits back to Boston because that's where she grew up. And when she went one time to Boston, she got my father's birth certificate. So I had his name, but that's all I had. In any case, so I hooked up with Ancestry, and through that, I got my cousin Terry, who was a side branch of the Wilson family. Her grandfather and my grandfather were brothers. And so she connected with me on Ancestry. And through Terry, I connected with three half-sisters. My father apparently was pretty busy. So I have twin sisters. One lives in Arizona, one lives in Texas. And I have a third sister from a different relationship who lives in Wisconsin. And I'm in contact with them on Facebook. And there is talk of us someday getting together, which would be wonderful. So I've been to visit my Wilson cousins in Massachusetts a number of times. And what's wonderful to me is that because my foster family they're all native Germans, and they were all older. So my aunts and uncles and my mama and papa, they all have passed away, and my Christmas list was getting shorter and shorter. And with a lot of them, that was the only connection or the only contact that I had with them, getting shorter and shorter. Now my Christmas list has expanded amazingly, because I now have cousins obviously that I didn't know about, and I did find my father. He is still alive. He lives in Massachusetts. He's married, and unfortunately, through my half sisters, I've learned that he's really not interested in being in touch with really any of us, and so the chances of me ever meeting him are slim. But I have pictures of him on Facebook, so I know what he looks like, and I can kind of keep track. So that's helpful. So lots of connections. Thanks.
It's now time for our congregational offering. If you are with us for the first time, feel free to pass the virtual plate. Your presence here in the Zoom room is your gift to us. Members, please click the link on your screen to make a donation or a pledge. Even though we are not in our beloved fellowship hall, our operating expenses are still the same. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. And thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community we love. Please join me in our congregational response. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate to these our offerings.
Joanne, would you like to start with expressions of gratitude?
So, okay, yes, sure. First and foremost, I would like to thank my mother for doing a very difficult thing at a very young age. Um, and of course, my foster family who were wonderful to me, and to this congregation for giving me a safe place. Thank you.
For myself, my list is a little bit longer. If you don't mind, if you'll just simply bear with me. On a personal note, I'd like to thank most especially Gary Mummert for his ongoing hard work on the behalf of our congregation. I had the privilege of working with him a couple of weekends ago on the fellowship hall and on the cottage. It's always great to participate and work with him. He's just such a tremendous guy and so very hardworking. Thank you, Gary. I'd also like to thank my wife, Michelle, who was very, very kind and had to help me read and reread and act as my editor for this presentation today. It was also offering helpful critique to hopefully make it cohesive, which I must have had some difficulty doing. I'd also like to thank my adopted parents, Gail and Toby Cousins, who chose me, cared for me, gave me a purpose and grounding, which allowed me to navigate this increasingly crazy world. I must not forget to mention my sister Beth, whose steadfast patience and tolerance of me has always been there. I finally understand its significance and its worth to me in my life. Finally, to my newly discovered siblings, Rob, Allison, Gretchen, Lisa, Ivor, and Jeff, I truly appreciate your kindness, generosity, and willingness to include me and accept me in your lives. I look forward to learning more about you in the coming years. I found out that my biological mother has decided to also participate in this viewing, for which I'm also very grateful. Welcome, and thank you. On a last personal note, I promise, my sister Allison is having a big birthday tomorrow, and I'd like to pass on my best wishes and happy birthday to her. I wish that I was there with her and could spend time with her, but COVID is kind of in the way. So Allison, happy birthday to you, honey. Sorry, at this point, we will extinguish the chalice. Nancy?
All right. Thank you. We extinguish this flame. Please join me in the extinguishing of the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
Closing words by T.S. Eliot. What we call a beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where that word is missing, where we began and know the place for the first time.